In this video, we see a chicken dissection in order to explore human tissues. The part of the chicken that we will be dissecting is the hind limb. It involves three major bones that the human also possesses. There's the femur, the tibia, and the fibula. You should be familiar with the following terms when doing the dissection of the chicken. The proximal side of the chicken is the side closest to where the head would be. Lateral is the side furthest from the outside of the body. Posterior or dorsal is the back end of the chicken. Medial is the underside of the chicken. Anterior or ventral would be the front of the chicken. Remember that the goal of this dissection is to observe the structures of the tissues of a chicken. We use a chicken because the tissues in a chicken are easy to spot and they're very similar to the tissues that we would find in a human. Now, as you complete the dissection, you'll be following along with the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint will give you information about the function of each one of these tissues. Keep in mind the essential question we're trying to answer in this unit. How does the structure of a tissue relate to the function of the tissue? The first tissue we will be observing is epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is one of the four main types of tissues. There are many types of epithelial tissues that are defined by shape and number of layers. The type of epithelial tissue that makes up the surface of our skin, or chicken skin, is the epidermis, and its stratified squamous epithelium, consisting of many layers of flat cells. They are firm but stretchy, protecting the organs from the environment while also being elastic and resistant to impact. Notice that I pull and stretch the epithelium in a number of locations.
Use your scissors to remove a piece of epithelial tissue so that you can see it underneath the microscope. So the next thing you want to do is flip your chicken over. This will expose a number of other tissues. On this side of the chicken, the first tissue that we'll be looking at is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is yellow, it's stretchy, it's spongy. You should find it in clumps all over the underside of the chicken. Also, if you lift up the skin, you should be able to find some adipose tissue lining the underside of the skin. This provides nutrient storage in the form of fat and also provides thermal protection when the weather gets cold for the chicken. Humans have adipose tissue lining the underside of their skin as well. The next tissue you're looking for is areolar tissue. If you remember from when you observed areolar cells, they're small cells connected by thin elastic fibers. And you'll see the same structure when you look at the entire tissue. It almost looks like a thin, clear spider web. You should be able to find it all over the chicken, usually lining adipose tissue and underneath the skin cells. If you remember, its function is to supply the skin with blood because the skin can't get the blood without the areolar tissue. So try to stretch some of it out, see if you can remove some of it and cut a piece off of it so that way you can look at it under the microscope. Next, you're going to want to use your scalpel to expose a piece of bone. The chicken you're using may not have a leg bone. If it only has the thigh, then do the same thing, exposing a piece of bone on the thigh. When you see it, try cutting into it, pick it up, feel it, notice how firm the texture is and how strong and sturdy it is. Remember, that's due to the osseous cells, which have an extracellular matrix with large, thick fibers that are sturdy. And inside of those fibers, in between the spaces, there's calcium deposits that give it its strength. Now you're going to want to try to remove the cartilage that's found at the end of the bone. Again, you may not be using the leg bone, but your bone should still have cartilage at the end of it. The cartilage is opaque and white. It won't be easy to remove, so take your scalpel and scissors and cut away at it until you can remove it. The fibers in cartilage are slightly more elastic than the fibers in bone. It also doesn't have the calcium deposits the bone has, making it a little bit more flexible. Compare the cartilage to the bone. Now you're going to want to find the tendon. The tendon appears to be a lighter colored tissue along the muscle tissue. It should be a band or a strip of lighter color. Scrape away any areolar tissue that might be in the location, and then use your scalpel to cut along each side of the band. This should separate the tendon from the rest of the muscle. Now, take your pick or your scalpel and put it underneath the tendon and pull at it. Notice how strong it is, yet how flexible it is. I also include in the video another location of a tendon that you might want to use. Finally, the tissue that's in largest quantity, and the tissue that you like to eat, is the muscle tissue. In this case, we're looking at skeletal muscle. If you remember, skeletal muscle functions involuntary function. Since the legs are a strong muscle in the chicken's body, the skeletal muscle tissue is very thick here. Remember, it's made of long, thick fibers that are flexible and stretchy, yet they can contract and release. So cut a piece of the skeletal muscle tissue so you can view it under the microscope. If you look even further, you can find a small piece of the kidney that's found right near the thigh.